Okay, we're recording. Welcome to another episode of Design Recharge. This is the last episode before I hit 5 years, Emily. So you are the end of a four-part series on sketchnoting. And I have Emily Carlton, who I met actually 4 years ago at Creative South. We were walking, and I don't meet a stranger. So I was glad to meet Emily, and she has just so blown me away with everything she's done. And she's gone out on her own, and how I kind of built this series was I kind of wanted to give you the backstory, kind of the science a little bit behind, which I think Alma would probably cringe. And she's like, I didn't do the science, but it really was. Like, it was a lot of facts about sketching and how sketching helps us think. And then went to Amarilys Henderson, who talked about faces, because I feel like that's kind of a barrier for a lot of people. They don't want to draw the faces or the bodies. And then we kind of saw the evolution of sketchnoting with Johnny Gwynn last week, going from not being able to draw really well to now understanding it, the layout and everything. And then you, because you're actually doing this, you're taking it to the streets and you're doing it professionally and you're making money at this. And I think hopefully it'll be very, give people a lot of hope, because now they will see that maybe they could do whatever their side project is. If their side project's sketchnoting, maybe they could do that too, but whatever it is, they can actually take some steps. And it is a little bit of a leap of faith, I think, to some extent. When I actually heard some of the answers to the questions, I was like, whoa, really? And so she's just ballsy, people. So I'm super excited to have Emily on. So Emily, give us a little bit of your background, about design, illustration. I know you're an illustrator as well, but where did your love for kind of sketchnoting begin?
Well, I'll go back just a little bit before that. So I went to school as a designer because I actually wanted to be an illustrator. I wanted to be a cartoonist like Gary Larson. However, I'm also really logical, and I didn't think it would make a lot of sense to go to college to become an illustrator, because you can't make money being an illustrator. And so I kind of went the design route because I still wanted to do art. I knew I liked it, but I also wanted to make a living and not struggle. So went to school for design, ended up working for nonprofit churches, small businesses, startups, and then my own clients. And eventually I was a designer at a church at the time, and a friend of mine asked if I could illustrate for some whiteboard videos. And that's kind of how the whole sketchnoting thing started, with whiteboard video.
So how many years ago was that?
That was probably 2.5 years ago.
And so when do you feel like you started sketchnoting? Because this was what was impressive to me.
I think my first sketchnote was in March of 2015.
So that's not very long that you were sketchnoting, and then you said, hey, this is good. I can do this. I feel like this is something in your wheelhouse, right?
Yeah, this is a thing that I can do.
So, all right. So, which I think is pretty courageous, actually. I love that. So do you have any tips for people? So that was, I'm reading this book right now about personality types, and people who just take that, like I'm just, I don't know, frozen by fear at times. Mm-hmm. And that does not seem to be that does not seem to be the case. Like you just said, hey, this is okay. I'm pretty good at it. I know I can continue to learn at it. And I think I'm like that in some ways maybe, but this is amazing that you did this and you just felt strong enough that you could just go. And I just feel like that most people I think would be kind of like me. So what was it that allowed you to kind of feel like, hey, I have these skills. It doesn't have to be perfect.
That's a good question. I think it's mostly just the confidence in knowing like where I started out, like even as a kid, just drawing cartoons and illustrating things. And I love cartooning more because it pairs wit and humor with art. And I think sketchnoting is really a kind of a way of comics and cartoons and drawing and bringing together that information and the art together again. So it's a good fit just because that's what my background is. That's what I wanted to do since I was a kid. Now it's not necessarily writing the humor and telling jokes, but I get to illuminate information with art, which is just a cool fit.
It is. It's super cool. All right. So do you have any tips for beginners in sketchnoting?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, like everybody says, practice regularly. My first sketch note is horrible, and we can look at it in a second if you want to, but everyone has to start somewhere, but the more you practice, the better you're going to get. And that's with anything, whether it's singing or dancing or art or sports, like practice matters. And if you're not doing it consistently, you're not going to get better. So number one, practice regularly. And then two, just, I think a lot of sketchnoters get caught up focusing on the drawing part. And I know you guys have talked about that in the other series with Amarilys and Johnny and Alma, just about how, oh, I can't do this because I'm not an artist. But I kind of come from the other side where I think it's all about the information. Like when people hire me as an artist to come in and draw their conference or their workshop or their panel, like they're not hiring me because I can draw an amazing image. Now I can, but they're hiring me because I can highlight their information. Like their information is good. They just don't know how to make it interesting and lasting and shareable. So,
and quick.
So to me, the whole point of sketchnoting is to highlight the information. So if you can draw a stick figure and it's memorable, that's effective. And start with the stick man and the little square house, but work your way up. So I always say in my workshops, make it memorable before it's a masterpiece and go for recognizable before you go for realistic. So as long as you can tell it's a dog, you're fine. It doesn't have to be the best dog ever. Just make it simple.
Right. I think that's great. And so I think that's where, for me, fear takes over. Like, no one's going to know that's a dog or whatever. So, and there's like washing out screen printing screens. Can you hear that by chance?
Yep. It's fine.
Sorry. Anyway, I can text him in a second, maybe. But anyway, so what kind of things did you learn early on? Because you already kind of had the drawing kind of stuff down. But what did you learn early on that maybe you're still using?
I think the biggest piece of information that I was shared with by William, who owns the Sketch Effect, was always keep your hand moving. So if you're sitting there with your notebook open, or whether you're doing graphic recording, which is like the big 4-foot by 6-foot boards that we do, at all times your hand should be moving, not just because it's productive for you, but it looks professional. Like if you're hired to be an artist and you're just standing there like staring at the speaker with your mouth open, that doesn't look like you're doing anything. So even if they're not saying anything relevant, they're on a bunny trail and you're just like, this is not important, I don't need to be capturing this, you can keep your hand moving by making a picture more beautiful than maybe you did the first time. Or the chances are when you're capturing a talk in real time, you have to kind of skip ahead. So that's the time when you can kind of go back and fill it in. So if you always keep your hand moving, it looks professional and it helps you keep your mind fresh and focused, because if you stand there and just stare at the speaker, your mind's going to wander and you can't have that.
So it's different when you're doing graphic recording, and maybe it's not different, but I do have a question about that. And maybe you can show us a picture, because maybe some people don't know really what the difference is between sketchnoting and graphic recording. You want to kind of tell us what the difference is?
Yeah, I think they're pretty similar. I think sketchnotes are usually a little bit more low key, maybe more personal. So we actually don't get a lot of sketchnote clients at the Sketch Effect. People want the big, huge, colorful boards that people can see in large groups. But for sketchnoting, I would say it's more personal. So I can come into a conference, I can sit in the front row and I can do the sketch notes and no one's going to know except for the 3 or 4 people around me. So that's great if you have an event where maybe there's a lot happening and adding another artist is going to be way too distracting. It's also good if your event is like pretty fast paced and there's not a lot of break time for people to go look at the boards in the lobby if it were graphic recording. So in that case, we can just take a picture, scan the sketch notes in, and then email it to the attendees afterwards. And it's more effective like that because it's like a visual recap instead of like a conference showpiece. So graphic recording is what I call sketch notes on crack. And it's the same concept. You're capturing everything in real time. However, you're just making it bigger and brighter. So with sketch notes, we usually do black, white, and gray, and then an accent color. But with graphic recording, we use anywhere from 3 to 6 colors, just depending whether it's like different kinds of blues or like blue and orange. Like we play with our color palettes a lot, depending on the client color palette. So there's a lot more fun, bright vibrancy with graphic recording. And I think that's why people want it more, just because it's more public.
So I saw some pictures and you would like have a pen in every hand, right?
Yeah.
So you're standing, you're drawing, And then you've got like your tool palette is your physical hand, right?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. So I keep a nail bag. This is it on my belt, and it's just like a clip-on thing. And then we have all of the markers in there. However, because I'm using black, white, gray, and then maybe 2 colors, these are the Neuland markers that we use, and they're water-based, so they don't stink. They're just really great to write with. They have a chisel tip, but the great thing about them is that they have this cap that kind of has a notch on it. So when I'm working and I just like put it in my fingers, it's not going anywhere. So I just have my hand down at my side and my marker is just kind of hanging there and it's not going anywhere. And that way I don't have to like take it out of the pouch, unclip the cap, which is like snap. And if you're in like a really quiet panel, it's really obnoxious for the artist to be constantly like uncapping the marker the entire time.
Right.
So it's just smart for us to keep all the pens uncapped, stick them in your fingers, and just pull them out as you need them.
So Kim is asking, what was the marker brand again? And I'm going to write it down.
Yeah, it's called Neuland, Neuland. And these are kind of expensive. They're only in Germany, so you have to get them shipped, and it takes forever to get to you, but they're worth every penny. The cool part is that they're refillable, so there's a little hole here, and you buy ink separately, and you just refill it every time it starts to get dry.
So how often, so Kent asked, don't they dry out?
Not actually. I mean, the tip will dry out a little bit, but once you start marking with it, it just flows right because there's a whole ink reservoir in there. So yeah, the tip might dry out if I haven't been using it for the past 5 or 10 minutes, but because I'm constantly keeping my hands moving, it's not really a problem.
So with the graphic recording, is it still about like 20, 40, 60-minute talks? Or do you have multiple boards, or one board has to be for 20 minutes or one board has to be for 40 minutes?
So usually our board limit is 25 to 30 minutes is the low end. It's hard to fill a 4-foot by 6-foot board with information in that amount of time. It's possible, but the pictures are usually going to be bigger to fill up the space. I think the sweet spot is about 45 minutes to an hour, and anything above an hour, you're probably going to need a second board because that's too much information for one board to fit on.
Right.
You can fit it on there. There are graphic recording and sketchnote companies that will just say, this is what you get, and if you have 2 hours, it's going in that space. Or if you have 1 hour, it's going in the same space. And they just kind of cram everything in there. But at the Sketch Effect, we're a little bit different in that it's all about the viewer journey for us. Like, yes, we want it to be beautiful and we want it to be pretty and we want to highlight the information. But if you can't read it or understand it at just like a quick glance, then it's not effective. So for us, it's all about the journey of, okay, here's where the talk started. Here's how it's going along. Here's the 3 points that they brought up. And then here's the conclusion. And if you can't tell the structure of the talk, then it's just noise and people aren't going to remember it as well.
All right, so a couple questions. I'm writing new questions down. So you keep talking about we, so I want you to explain what the Sketch Effect is and how you got involved with that, because I know it wasn't on my sheet, but I think it's critical.
Yeah, so the Sketch Effect is a visual communication solutions company, which is a mouthful way of saying we draw your information out. So we do whiteboard videos. So Georgia Power actually contracts the Sketch Effect to do explainer videos to talk about their products, or even
like Power. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. My dad worked for the power company, over 30-something years. So Georgia Power.
Yeah, the Atlanta Braves actually just, we wrapped up a project with them where we made an explainer video about their new stadium. So explaining to the viewers, here's how the new stadium works, here's how the parking works, here's what you need to bring, here's what you're not allowed to bring. And I thought it was a great success. I'm not even in Georgia, I'm in Tennessee, but it was cool to watch the Sketch Effect work explain something that's very complex. So if you were to just get an email from the Atlanta Braves saying, hey, our new stadium's open, here's all the rules, and it's like a huge text email, no one's going to read that. They're going to show up for game day and it's going to be chaos. But if you send them a link to a video that's like 2 or 3 minutes long and it tells them everything they need to know and there's pretty pictures, like everyone's like, cool, got it, nailed it.
Right.
And so basically we create a visually engaging experience. We want people to remember the information and share the information. And so
are these, so Kent asked, a dry erase board? So are these for the Sketch Effect, are those are they mainly, let me just use that, are they mainly on whiteboards, dry erase boards?
So actually, no. It's more called whiteboard just because of the style. I think when they first came out, people were using whiteboards to draw, and the whiteboards videos that I've done were actually on whiteboard. It was with a dry erase marker. But instead, it's more of an illustrative video. We have big sheets of white paper and we use black markers and sometimes colored too. And that's more for the ease of the artist in the shooting. So if you're shooting on a whiteboard, it's a very reflective surface. It's just hard to get a good shot without the artist being impeded and the lighting being good. So instead we just use paper, but the style is called whiteboard video.
Okay. So, and I actually just clicked up with your first video. I left out the F, but it says Erst whiteboard video. So that's Emily's first one. So then how did you get involved with that company?
So when I first did the first whiteboard video, that was for a friend in Houston who worked at a film studio there, and they were just pitching whiteboard ideas to their clients to hire them to do whiteboard videos. And so I was just an illustrator that they brought in to help with a couple of projects to just show that they were capable of doing that kind of video work. And then I posted that on my Dribbble account because why not? It's something new and different that I was working on. And at the time, I felt like I was in a rut creatively and I wasn't doing a whole lot of different work. So I was like, this is new and different. I'm just going to put it on Dribbble, even though it's not like a beautiful vector design like everything else on Dribbble. I was like, here's some crappy whiteboard drawings, but the Sketch Effect was scouting for talent at the time and they saw it and they were like, this person does whiteboard videos and we do whiteboard videos and she just started and would you like to come work for us? And we can train you on how to do all these things. So that was really my intro into sketchnoting, graphic recording, whiteboard videos.
So was this full-time or was this like contract?
It was contract. So I was still working in a church in Texas at the time when I did those whiteboard videos. And then I had moved to Nashville in January of 2015. I think it was about February, March was when they reached out about the whiteboard videos, and we were talking about me joining their team and working with them. And William, who owns the Sketch Effect, and I have a mutual friend who was having a book launch party here in Nashville. So we met up in person at that party for the first time and got to just talk about the possibility of working together. And shortly after I got hired, and so after I got hired, I was like, cool. I feel so inadequate. William's work is up here and I am down here and I can't believe they even hired me in the first place. So I just wanted to like dig in and do the work. And I just did a Google search of like things to do or like sketchnoting. And I saw that Mike Rohde was having a workshop here in Nashville in like a month. And so that was March. And so in April, I had the Creative South Conference. I actually left the Creative South Conference early to go to Mike's workshop 2 years ago. And that's kind of where I got my first training.
So then after that, well, let me go back to this. So how early on, so was the Dribbble piece, the whiteboard, was that, because had you sketchnoted anything before, like, so nope. You really hadn't, okay.
I think I had seen William's work before, because when I went to their website, when they said, hey, would you like to work with us? I went to their website and I was like, I've seen this website before. I think someone had linked to it before and I was just like, oh, cool. But it didn't really click at the time until that conversation got started.
So I think some people they're more apprehensive to share because they feel judged. And it is a lot of private stuff if you're doing sketchnoting, or it can be. How early on in sketch, was that whiteboard thing, the thing you posted on Dribbble, really your first thing?
Yep, that was really the first thing. And then my first sketch note, I can share the screen real quick.
Yeah.
See if I can find it. That's not it.
So were you sharing it on any other platforms besides Dribbble?
I had a website on Squarespace at the time, but I wasn't really updating it.
But like on Facebook or Instagram, Instagram was around, but not on those, but now you do?
Yep. I wasn't really sharing art on Instagram at the time. I was just trying to be a cool fake photographer. So if you scroll really far back in my Instagram feed, it's like really bad artsy shots of things that I thought were cool. But ultimately I decided, hey, I'm not a photographer. Why am I only posting photos that are not that great in the first place?
But I think that's a good lesson. And I think it's great that you kept that up on your feed, because people do change and people do try things. And then they realize, hey, this isn't me. And I think that this may be sketchnoting for some people, but I think it's about trying, because you you will find your right fit, I think.
Yeah.
So the whiteboard thing that you did for your friend, was that for pay or it wasn't for pay?
It was for pay. So I took off work. I took off work that day and drove to Houston and did a whiteboard video. And then they ended up calling me back about a year later to do a couple more.
Cool.
So that was my first big freelance drawing illustration job. And that's kind of what launched everything out, was those whiteboard videos.
All right. Do you have your thing ready or no? You want me to keep talking?
Yes.
Oh, there you go.
So hopefully you can see that.
Yes.
That's my first ever sketch note. So this was after I had gotten hired with the Sketch Effect, but we didn't do any training at this point. I didn't get trained till that summer in June or July. So in the meantime, between me getting hired in March and my first training in July, I was just practicing. So this was the first ever sketch note that I did at church. Again, I was new to Nashville, so I was church hopping every week, and I would go to events like Creative Mornings and try sketch notes there. So that was the first ever.
How long did it take to click for you?
I think Mike Ritty's workshop is really what made it click. So
it was like a month later, or not even, because Creative South is, the very beginning of April every year.
Yep. So these are the sketch notes from Creative South.
There's Dustin.
There's Dustin Lee's workshop, and it's not really sketch notes as much as I drew a really bad picture of Dustin and took notes. And then some other attempted sketch notes from some of the talks at Creative South. And so then I left Creative South early, and it clicked at the workshop right after Creative South that I left early, Mike Ritty's workshop. So you can see we started out really basic, drawing simple stuff, learning how to draw and write text, and then just practicing together.
So then, but this has been my kind of barrier. Is it about taking notes, or is it about listening, getting the key things, and then putting those key things down? Because early on, it's a lot of writing. But when I see them now, can you pull up something that's like more of one of the graphic, the bigger pieces, or even one of your sketch notes, like from more recently?
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick.
Because that seems like, so to me, it's about listening and knowing what's important.
Exactly. So let's see. Here's a recent one.
Those are awesome.
So yes, it is all about listening. At first, you are scared that you're going to miss something, and so you write everything down. And then the more you do it, the more you practice, the more comfortable you are, because you learn how to listen. So with listening, it's just practice, really. There's no easy way. There's no hack. You just learn cues. So one thing that I teach in my workshops is, like, before we even start writing or drawing, I teach people how to listen, just the basics. And it's hard. Like, it's really hard to grasp, even in a workshop that's a couple hours long. It takes months, if not years, to really learn how to listen. I have a couple interesting things that I came up with. Let me see if I can find them. So in one of my workshops, or actually all the workshops that I do that I have time for, I will teach how sketchnoting listening is different from kind of everything else.
Do you think sketchnoting listening is similar to maybe what people should do in classes, or?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So here's something that I started with. Let's see, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Head to hand, head to heart.
Yep, head to hand and then head to heart. So when you're sketchnote listening, or active listening is another word for it, you're basically bypassing yourself. So normally people are listening, the information's coming into their head, it's swirling around in their brain, and they're thinking about how it applies to them. And then it's swirling around in their heart, and they're thinking about how it applies to them and how it makes them feel. And then they write out only the things that they've thought about and felt. They're not actually writing down what the person said, most cases. So instead of that, which is fine, like if you're taking personal notes, that's perfectly fine. However, if you're being paid to capture information, I call it head to hand, where the information's coming into your head and it's bypassing your brain and your heart, and it's just coming out on the page.
But it's about knowing what's important. And
right.
So do you do any pre-work? Because this is the other thing, how much are you researching these speakers and how much, I mean, like
None.
None. Wow.
None.
So it's really about listening. Have you always been a good listener then? Do you think this is just a natural skill that you were blessed with?
Maybe, but it did take practice. When I would train with William, we would all do the same thing, and then we would compare sketch notes, and he would say, these are the main points of the talk. What did you get and what did you miss? And so just practicing with someone who has been doing this a lot longer than I have, that's how you learn to listen, because you're like, oh yeah. So a couple listening cheats are repetition. So if someone who's on stage is speaking and they repeat themselves, that means that it's really important to them. If they're using their hand gestures a lot, it means it's important to them. If they get really loud, it means it's important. If they put it on the screen, it's important. Like there's all these little cheats that you've seen, but you don't really realize that people are communicating non-verbally in ways that give you cues on to know what to listen to. So if someone's being really loud and they're using big hand motions, I'm like, all right, it doesn't seem like it fits in with your talk, but you're really excited about it, so I need to write that down.
And so you don't have like a separate piece of paper that you're writing these things down. You're actually going straight up. And so you're just taking a gamble, to be honest. But this is so like fitting to me with what I know of you. It's like, yeah, I'll just dive right in. And like, you don't even know how deep the water's going to be, like how deep that part of the subject is going to be. It could be, but you end up just working it out. Like the guy that you had on just a minute ago that was like grays and blacks. That, I mean, that one is like killer. It looks like you have taken hours and really, you know, I mean, and granted, I know that you've been doing this professionally and you've been trained and you've practiced really hard for 2 years doing this as consistently. And I think that helped. I mean, because I'm thankful you showed your first, because it was not like that. And so I think Hannah said, hey, this makes me feel better though. But so when I was in college as a student, I remember even in high school, I was not the greatest student. I mean, I don't know, I was just not that smart. So I had to study really a lot. And it was just like painful just trying to take notes at all these. But when I became a professor, we started doing these freshman seminar classes, and they had 9 keys to listening, 9 things. I'm like, what? Why didn't somebody teach me this? And exactly what you said, hand gestures, repetition, if they put it on the screen or if they get loud. But there are 9 of these things. And if you can teach somebody to clue in, then you know what's most important. And sometimes it's a pause, or they do
pausing is another one.
They do like a act something out. That's always something, you know, instead of just maybe hand gestures, but they're like, hey, watch this. And then they go and do something. That's another important kind of thing. So to me, so Kim says, it is really amazing. I would love for my 12-year-old to learn this. And I do think it is about the keys of listening. So do you find yourself sketchnoting and the information that you're getting in, like in client meetings, or do you do it then too, or do you still take regular notes other times?
It kind of depends on the context. Like, I'll just show you my current notebook that I'm working in. This is a meeting that I was in, just this page. You can't really see it that great, but it's just a meeting. Now it's kind of sketchy. There's pictures there, but for the most part, it's just for me. So I didn't really worry about my handwriting being legible. It was purely just getting the information and writing it down. However, like just the other night, I went to a thing at church, and they were just teaching about theology and some other stuff. And that was a lot more sketchnotey. So these are personal notes, but I still try to incorporate pictures and like arrows and highlighting and containers, just so I can remember the big points. Because
I think containers is one of the things that you do so well. And I know it looks like it's planned out, but really, I think that's how you're showing an idea. So Lainey had a question about the sketchnote maybe a little bit ago, maybe the guy that you had showed earlier that I love that one. How long did it take you to do that sketchnote?
For that sketchnote, let me just share it real quick since everyone can just look at it.
Yeah, we got it. Rob Johnson.
There we go. So that one, the talk itself was about 35 minutes long. So it was a little bit shorter. And you can kind of tell because there's more chunks of information instead of like paragraphs of text. It just kind of depends on the content. So for conferences that are like tech, there's going to be a lot of little interesting tidbits that are important. So you have to write them all down. But with conceptual things like sermons, it's all about ideas. And so you can kind of summarize the whole idea a lot simpler than you can with something more complicated. I don't know if that makes sense. So his sermon was shorter. He kind of had a storytelling thing going throughout the whole thing, just talking about himself and things that he's seen and heard of. The talk was 35 minutes. I show this on Instagram a lot where I'll finish a sketch note and there's no grays. Sometimes the illustrations aren't even fully finished yet because my main priority when I'm listening to something is getting the right information down. Like I can remember how to draw a picture, or if I leave myself a blank spot, like for instance, I didn't draw the world and the arrows on the bottom left corner during the sketch note. I just knew that radical world change was kind of a really big idea in that, and that a globe would be a great way to draw that. I can remember to draw that later more than I can remember the phrase radical world change. So when I finish a sketch note, it's not necessarily pretty, but I have the bare bones down. Like I have the foundation, I have the skeleton structure, and that's when I'll go home or finish it up right then, maybe anywhere from 10 minutes if I'm rushed or 30 minutes if I have some time to just go in with the grays, finish the illustrations. So this one probably took an hour and a half. Just because this was for a client that lived in Nebraska. So I had all the time in the world to finish it. I wasn't rushed. Like if we're hired at a conference, we want to get those to the client right away. So we don't have as much time to finish it. So it just kind of depends on the context and how much time I have to finish it out.
So then, I guess that's one of the things with that piece I love so much is the grays, because you're giving us depth. But I think you've created this system and structure with the shapes, and then the arrows kind of take us through. And again, it's about listening. What was important was the story. And with that, you could repeat his story to the gist of what he was talking about, that we don't need every single word that he said. But like you said, radical world change was something you knew you couldn't remember and you needed to write that down. So I think that's terrific. So there's no pre-work. You didn't know what Rob Johnson looked like before you went to church that day. Okay.
So for the most part, we liked to do the headers. It's kind of either or. At the Sketch Effect, when we do graphic recording, we like to do the headers beforehand. So we ask the speaker name, we ask what their talk title is going to be, and we ask for their headshot ahead of time, because that way we can do those before we even show up to the event, and we can just like get to work on the whole sketch note without having to try and like perfect their face when they're standing over you, like finish my board. However, with sketch notes, I like to actually do the header last. So I just leave the header blank. So I go back in with the logo and the portrait afterwards, just because that's something that I really want to spend a lot of time on to make sure that it looks good. So I don't want to rush through it while I'm doing the sketch notes.
All right. So going back to your Mike Rohde workshop, how long was that workshop? Was it an 8-hour workshop, 3-hour workshop?
I want to say it was 4 hours. I think it started at 1 p.m. and I think we got out that afternoon. So I want to say 4 hours. It might've been 5, but it was shorter. Like it wasn't a half day, full day thing.
So then how did taking that workshop, because that seemed to be like the light bulb moment, how did taking that workshop help you, or taking a workshop, because I'm not sure it would have had to have been, but I think you working with William? Yeah, William. I think working with Williams helped also. So it could have been him or Mike giving you a workshop. But how would, I'm trying to, so that other people could find maybe a workshop or something online like what you're doing. And why would that help? Why did that help you? And why do you think that would help other people?
For me, it was just all about the in-person experience. I think I learned by doing and learning from masters more. Like, I love books. I will read and buy all the books in the world. And I have a lot of sketchnoting and doodling and drawing books, but those only get you so far, at least for me. I can learn from books, but it just doesn't click practically until I see a master do it. So at Mike Rohde's workshop, he's the guy who literally wrote the book on sketchnoting. So he's the one who can give me feedback. And that's the great thing about live workshops, is that you have the pro there to give you that feedback live. Like, that was good. Keep doing that. Also do this. Or that was maybe not too clear. Maybe try this instead. And just that live real-time feedback was really helpful. And then just the confidence of practicing is what it really came down to, is practicing. And then one of my favorite parts in the workshop was that whenever we finished an exercise, we would lay our sketchbooks open and walk around the room and see what everybody else did. So I always teach in my workshops, your sketch notes should never look like anybody else's. And that's because your style is different. You learn and you listen a little bit differently. Hopefully the structure is the same across all of them, but they're going to look different. And I think it's cool to learn from other people, not just the teacher.
Absolutely. I think you get a ton. So Amy's saying, I need to go back and study his books a lot. That was fun when we did that in your workshop at Creative South. So
yeah, I totally stole that from Mike. So I was like, that was like the most valuable part. So now I do it in all my workshops.
So I had Lainey actually asked me a question on Facebook earlier this week or last week. And really, what's the difference between doodling? And I know we're not even on question 4 yet, or I think we're just a little bit in question 4. Sorry about that. But what's the difference between doodling and sketchnoting? Because I think in all this series, we really haven't covered that.
Yeah, I don't know if I have an answer for that. If I were to take a stab at it, I think doodling is probably more of a mindless activity. I think it's more of keeping your brain occupied and your hand moving, because some people learn with motion. Like I'm kind of the same way. Like if I am listening to a podcast or watching a movie, sometimes I'll draw at the same time. And it's funny, like when I go back at those drawings, I'll look at a specific piece of the drawing and be like, I was watching that movie and that scene when I drew that specific thing. It's really crazy how those memories are tied together, like the kinetic emotion. So I think doodling is more the motion and keeping your brain occupied, but it's not necessarily like a focused illustration like sketchnoting is.
Right. Literally it's taking notes in sketches instead of, I do think it's key. Listening is absolutely key. I agree. I think your definition of that is terrific. So Daniel has a question regarding the use of color in illustration. Are there any famous or lesser known illustrators that you would like to emulate? Great question.
I always go back to Gary Larson because his style is so simple, but it just communicates so much. Of course, I can't think of anybody else at the top of my head right now, but I actually look at artists that aren't even related to sketchnoting. So even like paperwork is really inspiring to me, or watercolor. And for me, it's just like being inspired by the basics of designs, like line, shape, color, form, movement, motion. Those things inspire me and will inform my own style. So I could doodle something and then be inspired by a completely different form of art, and then my doodle might change because it was informed by something else. So I'm not really looking to emulate anybody. I'm just looking to be inspired by others. And it's not really necessarily limited to illustration.
Gotcha. All right. So you also teach workshops. And so how much should someone know before coming to a workshop? Or maybe what kind of questions should they ask before they sign up?
I think people can come not knowing anything. I am an advocate of you should come even if you think you can't draw. You should come even if you think your handwriting sucks. If you have an interest in learning how to listen and take notes visually, and just, even if it's just for yourself, like I've had plenty of people in my workshops that are like, I just want to take notes in church that look cool. Like that's totally justified. I think if you have an interest, that's enough. It's always nice if you do homework beforehand, like this is what sketchnoting is, and here's some of the masters, and here's different styles. Like it's always nice to be informed, but I always start with a clean slate in my workshops. Like, yes, I know you probably know how to draw a box, but we're going to go over it anyway, because to me, I like to lay that foundation of the basics, because the basics are what's most important. Like it's not about drawing the amazing cat or dog or house. Like it's about drawing a dog or cat or house that's recognizable. So it's nice if you want to get those skills better up. And I try to build in question times into my workshops where it's like, all right, I got this. What about this? Like, I want to be able to be a resource to people. So it's impossible to cover all of those bases, like the person who knows nothing and is just interested, and the person who's already started and wants to get better. I can't necessarily serve everybody, but I'm at least available before or after to kind of help people.
So if you're doing a series of workshops, say, there might be a beginner one where you cover the basics, and then you might have an intermediate or an advanced one where you're going to be covering different things, maybe more concepts or listening skills or structural things that really you get into later after you've been doing this for a while. What would you say they would need to know if they were in an intermediate, or how long would they have been sketchnoting, or what would they have, like what skills would they have accomplished before they could really level up?
I think if you're going to consider yourself an intermediate sketchnoter, you have to be a pro at listening. Like, that's the foundation, is listening. Like, if you can't listen, if you're just an amazing illustrator and your sketch notes look great, but your content isn't accurate, it's not effective. And that's the whole point. So if you're going to be intermediate, you need to be an effective listener, hands down. Again, with the drawing, like if you can draw an effective drawing that's a stick man and a box with a triangle on top of it for a house, good enough for me. I don't really consider level of prettiness, level of effectiveness.
Right. And that's as design is. It doesn't always have to be the tightest, most beautiful portrait or photographically accurate, right? So how long did it take you to start feeling confident? Or did you feel pretty I mean, you really had drawn all your life in these simplified, you kind of mimicked things. So that's time as well. So you felt confident in that. And then you took a leap of faith and said, I can do this. I've got these skills. I can do this. But when did you start feeling really confident about doing this as part of your profession?
I think probably 4 months after Mike's workshop and pretty immediately after William's training. That was where I just felt like they both were so helpful and knowledgeable and encouraging that they were like, you can do this. And even though my skills at the time were pretty shaky and everyone always has room to improve, my confidence was kind of acquired when other people said you can do it instead of me, because I was like, I don't know, you're up here. I wasn't really believing in myself that I could level up to their level.
So it's so the community really had it. So if you don't have like a master in your area, what you can do is reach out and talk to some people who are doing it online. You can also share online and try to get encouragement. But instead of just leaving it at that, you could ask to be mentored by somebody, or you could take an online workshop, right? All right. So
yep, I think so. I think also with confidence, like confidence does not equal mastery. Just because I was confident in what I was doing and I was finally like, yeah, I can do this and I'm okay at it. Like, just because I was confident doesn't mean that I'm a master. Like, once you let that pride take over, like, I'm a master, I'm confident, then you stop growing and you stop learning and you stop getting better. So as long as you're confident and you're open to learn and get better, I think that's the sweet spot.
I love that. Because humility is super important. So Kent has a question. Have you ever been the artist and the speaker at the same time?
Not yet, but I'm kind of hoping to. I think it'd be really cool to be like a speaker on stage and draw at the same time. I just don't know what that looks like.
I don't know how you could do that, but I mean, maybe, it would be amazing. I think I would just, I guess it'd be like being a puppeteer. You can do Ray Charles and the backup girls at the same time, because it's really thinking on both sides of your brain to think about what's next.
Right.
So with this, and this is something that you offer, how often do you currently practice?
Right now, I practice sketchnoting pretty much weekly. Sunday church is mostly the avenue where I do that, just because I'm already there and I'm already interested and engaged, and it's a great way to practice. Sermons are a really easy way to practice because pastors are trained on speaking, so they know how to deliver information in bite-sized chunks. Pastors, like, the typical thing is the 3-point sermon, the introduction, the 3 points that support it, and then the application. And then there's also what they call the inductive method, where it's observation, interpretation, application. And it's just like this whole process. And once you learn the process of speaking, you can just listen to anybody and you're like, oh, this is a 3-point sermon, or, oh, this is the inductive method. This is so easy. Like once you learn the background, the skeleton of the talk, you can do anything.
That's cool. That also helps with confidence too, probably.
Yeah, for sure. So I mostly practice at church. However, I also sketchnote at things like creative mornings, whenever I go to a professional breakfast or a networking like luncheon or lecture. I'll bring my sketchnote along, my sketchbook along, just because it's what I do and it's how I listen now. And I think it's a great way to connect with people too. If you're sitting at a table and someone's talking and you just start drawing out the notes, they're like, oh my gosh. And then you've made a new friend and it's like a great conversation starter.
Yeah, absolutely. And so let me see. Somebody had a question. I want to make sure we answer it. So Vanna Hutchinson asked, can you give the book titles or workshops you have used?
Yes.
And I will share the Mike Rohde book over here on the side because I know I already have that in the in my link. So you keep talking and I'm going to share that one.
Yeah. So I'm going to share my screen real quick. I have a reference guide that I send out to all my students. I think it's on page 9. So here's all the books that I recommend. And these are just I think the most effective way to get started with sketchnoting and doodling and drawing. Dan Rome's book, Draw to Win, is one of my favorites. It's really short read. There's a lot of pictures in it. And it's just like, if you've ever read The War of Art, it's really similar to that. In that it's just like 1-2 punch, straight talk. This is why it's important. And then there's some practical application as well.
And then Sunny Brown, I know that Alma has talked about her. I can't think of what the name of that one was. You took it away too quickly.
Oh,
but
sorry.
That's okay. No, it's okay. I'll get you to send me a picture of that, or send me the
Here's
Doodle Revolution. And I think that's what I think some people get confused with doodling and then sketchnoting, because to some extent, some people are calling it doodling, but it really is sketchnoting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think, again, like doodling is not necessarily intentional, whereas sketchnoting is pairing the information and the art together. So it's not just like filling the page with doodles because you don't like white space and it looks weird. It's filling the page with intentional drawings because you want to highlight the information. So you're not just drawing hearts and stars and globes and crosses and stuff that is frankly pretty cool, but at the same time, like if it's not intentional, I'm not really interested in it.
Right. So people could, if they wanted to, they could do a sitcom, they could do a TED Talk, they could do, if they wanted something you could do a YouTube how-to video, anything like that are good things to practice. Do you have anything else that you would, I do think it's interesting to do it in person. It also helps you get maybe over some of your fears. But is there any other things that you might help somebody in the beginning?
Yeah, I always tell people to start practicing with TED Talks, and that's because TED Talks are timed. They're so limited, and the speakers are rehearsed, so they know exactly what they're doing. They're not just like, oh, I lost my PowerPoint, and where's my notes? Like, they're not confused. So it's good to practice with the structure so that when you don't have it, you're not freaking out. And then TED Talks are also really fast. The speakers talk really, really quickly. And if you can capture a sketch note from a TED Talk, you can capture anybody because it's probably not going to get much more fast than that. And it's just like kind of training yourself for the extreme. And then reality is usually a little bit farther back from that. Right. I also recommend that people sketchnote things that they're interested in. Like if you think TED is like super boring and you hate lectures, don't sketchnote it. Like your art and your sketchnotes are so personal. And if you are drawing and sketchnoting and capturing things that you're not interested in, it's totally going to show. But if you're interested in hiking, like sketchnote your hikes. I do that sometimes when I go somewhere new. Like you can sketchnote experiences, restaurants, recipes, processes, events. You can do a personal journal. Like sketchnotes don't have to be lecture. I always say that there's lecture-based and experience-based, and they're just completely different animals. So if you don't like lectures, that's okay. Sketchnote experiences.
Maybe I'll do that when I'm in Italy next week.
You should.
Yeah, I won't be beautiful, but you'll be able to tell where I was, hopefully.
Yes.
Cross our fingers. So Daniel asked, do you hold workshops in North Carolina?
I don't. I've never held one, but I'm always open to them. So my first workshop that I ever held was in January. The second was in April, and that was last month. So I'm still new to this workshop format. I love it, and I'm always making it better and improving it. I'll probably be hosting one in the fall here in Nashville, but I don't have a venue lined up yet. Like, I know where I want to have it. I just haven't booked it yet. So I don't have dates or anything as far as that goes. However, workshops will be happening as far as where, probably Nashville, because it keeps the cost down for the students if I don't have to travel. But I'm open to conversation. I've been talking to people in Kentucky and Phoenix. So if you want to bring me in for a workshop, let's talk. Like, I'm open to that. It just depends on how many people we can get together.
And we're going to share your contact information in just a minute, but we have a few more questions. I actually think we're going to be able to finish, Emily. Okay, so I'm going to do this one really fast. And I really like this question. Oh, well, this was before the question that I really liked. But what are some things that you learned? Because I think, again, you also are a very teachable spirit, and I love that about you. What are some things that you learned from your January workshop and then from your Creative South workshop?
My January workshop, I learned that I think people value learning from each other just as much as from the teacher. Like, I kind of changed stuff on the fly. I had an iPad Pro with me, and so I just got an idea in the middle of the workshop. I was like, hey, let's do this together. And so I had people come up to the front and draw on the iPad Pro, like different kinds of containers. And I had people work together at their groups and their tables. And like, I think those kinds of activities are what people really latch onto, like the community. And sketchnoting is a very close community. People encourage each other and give each other tips. So finding ways to tap into community and sketchnoting is always a plus. And then I think the biggest thing I learned at the Creative South workshop was that I just didn't have enough time. I wish I could have gone on for another hour, but I didn't have it. So I don't want to do the content injustice by cutting it off. Like, I really feel like there's a certain order to learn these things in. So I'm not going to do another workshop that I can't have some control over the time on. And yeah, it might be long, but you're going to learn it.
Right. So then Vanna also had a question. She said, Phoenix, Arizona, could you offer a workshop via the internet? And you know what? That's our next question. So tell us about that.
So I have been working on an online course called Sketchnote Academy. And I actually just have a landing page at sketchnoteacademy.com right now. You can sign up to join the mailing list. And now is actually a really good time to join the mailing list, because now that I have most of the content written, I'm figuring out how people want to learn it. So whether that's, I want to buy each lesson as I progress, or I want to buy the beginners, which is only like 5 modules, or I want to buy the expert only, which is like another 5 modules, but not the beginner. Like, I want to learn what you want, because I don't want to deliver a course that you're not interested in. So right now is great to sign up on the email list. I'm going to be sending out a survey. How do you want this content delivered? How do you want to learn? And based on the feedback that I get there, that's probably how I'm going to be delivering the course. So
it's sketchnoteacademy.com for anybody who's listening on iTunes. So you can go in, you can sign up, and then she's going to send you a newsletter on when you can purchase and how to purchase.
Yep. And that's probably coming 2018. I'll be honest. It's going to be a lot of work to do an online course. I'm not just going to like film in my bedroom. Like, it's going to be a quality thing that you can always reference and come back to. So just be patient. And if you're not patient, let's talk about a workshop in person.
Yeah, that's a great idea. All right. So here's the question I love to ask everybody. What would you tell your younger self to do differently if you could go back in time? And then how far back would you go?
I would go back to senior year of high school when I was deciding about college and what I wanted to do. As I mentioned, I kind of went to college for design because I wanted to be an illustrator, but I didn't think it was practical. And I think limiting yourself is never productive. Like, my friend John always says, your past dreams are going to come back to haunt you. It just depends on how long it's going to take for them to get back at you and like eat away at you. So don't deny your dreams. Maybe the timing isn't right. Maybe it is wiser to go to college and learn about business, but don't let that determine your life either. I think side projects can be profitable, and you don't have to let your college education define everything. However, I was really limiting myself by saying it's not practical and it's not possible and I'm not good enough. So I would have gone to college for illustration. I don't know if I would have gone to the same university. But now I'm kind of kicking myself because I only had a couple drawing classes in college and they weren't all that great. I didn't learn a lot of basics. I never took a figure drawing class. So I'm really not confident about faces and figures and hands. So I'm kicking myself now because I have to go back and learn the basics. And it's like, I should have learned this years ago.
Yeah, but maybe it wasn't the right time. Like I always think that maybe you couldn't take it in. You were learning something else, right? And now when you really want to learn, you will really learn it, right?
Yep. Yeah, because I care about it. So who knows?
I mean, I always think it's at 20. I mean, I hate this question, but I love this question, right? Because I'm the same way. I'm like a no regrets kind of person. But I really do believe like you are learning. I'm just want to encourage you because I think you're doing great. And
Thanks.
Who cares that you didn't know how to draw, fingers or something. So tell us a little bit about, in the last 2 minutes, while I'm going to share your links, what's next for you, and then where you tell us where we can find you besides sketchnoteacademy.com. What else, and what else are you doing? Because this isn't the only way you make a living. I always feel like this is kind of a side project, right? This is just one of the things that you're doing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I practice sketchnotes every week, but I do it professionally anytime from once a month to like 3 times a month. It's very dependent on who hires us and how long those gigs are. So it's very much a contract position whenever the gigs come up. Outside of that, I do freelance design and I do freelance illustration, just random jobs because I have time and I think it's great. Side note, if I had to give anyone else advice, it would be to get debt free. So get your finances in order and you can live the life that you have dreamed of because you can actually afford to do it. So unrelated, but there you go. But what's next for me is more of the same. So more sketch notes, more graphic recording, the online course, sketchnoteacademy.com, hopefully 2018. And if you want to follow me online, I just started a vlog. It's called The Sketch Vlog, and I'm going to be talking about a lot of the gigs that I do with the Sketch Effect. So walking through picking the colors, getting ready to traveling, how I interact with a client, what the events look like, just kind of everything behind the scenes. And then emilycarlton.com is just my portfolio site. Instagram is probably where I'm the most active. My username is @EmilyACarlton.
And that's what you are on Twitter also, I think.
That's right.
I always like to make sure that everybody knows. So her Facebook page is facebook.com/Emily Carlton LLC. And then she was talking about her YouTube and her, she does make a lot of videos. She also, I've posted 3 other videos over in the comments in the chat section. Your YouTube channel is youtube.com/Emily Carlton. Not Emily A, but just Emily Carlton. Yep. So Hannah says, got a meeting. She loved the show. She usually doesn't get to go because she works at a church and they just work her to death. It's my church, so they don't work her to death. I mean, they do work her a lot. But anyway, she does have a meeting in the afternoons on Wednesdays. So we'll have to talk to him about that. But I'm just playing. Anyway, Emily, thank you so much. I want to just read off some of these over here again. Remember, Instagram, Emily A. Carlton, YouTube, Emily Carlton, Facebook, Emily Carlton LLC, and then again her you have a bit.ly, it's bit.ly/illustration is for everyone, all spelled out. That's a newsletter. You can also sign up at the bottom of her website, which was Emily A. Carlton.
Just EmilyCarlton.com.
Emily Carlton. I didn't have that on my list, so I'm going to add that in. I mean, I know I've been there, but it threw me off with the A, but that's okay. I throw people off with the C.
I can't get consistent usernames on all my platforms, so you get what you can.
I think that's fine. We got one more question. And the sketch blog address or vlog address. Which one is
it's youtube.com/Emily Carlton.
Okay, so your blog is just a video blog, and that's it. So Emily, thank you for heading this up or finishing us out, I guess.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This is fun.
It is. It was really fun, and I'm thankful for all you guys coming, and I hope that you liked this series. I'd love to know if you want another series when we get back, like me and my little friend here, not Emily, like my invisible friend, I guess. When I get back from Italy, which this is the longest I'm going to have been away from Design Recharge, so I feel like everybody's going to drop off and you're going to not remember who I am or anything. So it's kind of a long time, but it will be my 5-year anniversary with myself and Design Recharge, I guess.
Congratulations.
So Amy says she won't forget about me, thankfully. Thank you, Emily. I appreciate it. It's been a long time, so I'm really, really excited. I've never been anywhere, so I'm excited about Italy. I'll be gone for 2 weeks. You can follow me at Design Recharge. I might post some things there too, but I definitely will be C. Diane Gibbs will probably be filled up with on Instagram the letter C, because my first name is Constance. You can thank my mom for that. If your name's Constance, no offense, it's not for me. So, but if you want to follow me, you can always follow at Design Recharge, www.rechargingyou.com. or designrecharge.org, kind of gets you to the same place. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Design Recharge. And I can't wait to have you back. Or Emily, I'd love to have you back. We'll talk about something else because you do some pretty fascinating things. And we have one more question.
Yes.
I try to see. Okay. Oh, Sia said, thanks. Congrats. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. Sia, I'm excited that it's been this long. And I had an aunt one time ask me, she's like, well, who made you do that? Talked about a commitment. I said I was going to do it for 5 years before I let it go, but I'm not letting it go or anything. I'm just making it 5 years. And she said, I said, me, I made that commitment to myself. Anyway, I thought it was funny. I think we should make commitments to ourselves sometimes, right? I mean,
right.
We got to do that sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but what would help me the most is if you just rate it on iTunes or give it a thumbs up on YouTube or make a comment underneath. If you go to rechargingyou.com and you liked it, or you want, that's the best way to make or share it with somebody. That's the best way to get the word out. So I appreciate you guys. I'm excited. Blake Stevenson and Von Glitchka, not together, but soon after each other when I get back in June. So it's going to be a lot of illustrators. So maybe Emily, you'll like to come and see them talk. Blake is one of he just draws the cutest little monsters. Like, I just love them. And so the way he draws is really inspiring to me. And not that I want to copy him, but I do think it's good to get ideas and inspiration, just like you were saying, from people that are outside of the area. And I'm not an illustrator yet, but hopefully I will be one day. So anyway, I'll come back and I'll be a whole new lady from Italy. Not really. I mean, I'm planning on being my same self, but you know what I mean. Anyway, I'm just rambling now. So thank you guys. Thank you, Emily. Now you're side by side, so I'm trying to look at you. But I will see you guys in a month, I guess. Bye.